Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to season 2 of Verifiably Random. I am Min.
And I'm Marc.
And I'm John.
And we are back. Back.
Yay!
But so what's been going on, guys? I haven't seen you in forever. It's been for 3-4 months. I'm kidding. I see you guys.
I know. So much has happened since Decipher, so it's super exciting to be back and start season 2.
Yeah, it's great to be here. And actually, I'm delighted that there was even demand for season 2. You know, I didn't know whether it was going to even run a second season, but I feel like we've got something special now. This is going to be like The Simpsons. You know, we're going to be like 36 years into this, and people are still going to be craving more.
Yeah,
and there's so much. I think there's so much to talk about too. Like there's so many announcements coming, so many things to talk about. Like this is going to be a jam-packed season. It feels like.
Yeah, totally. we do have quite a bit of stuff to dive into, but maybe we'll start off light a little bit, right? Today we'll just have to ease everybody into this. What's been going on in sort of in all of our world?
Yeah, so maybe I can go first. And by the way, sorry everyone, I don't have my wonderful microphone that the Algorand Foundation got from me because I'm traveling at the moment. So maybe my voice won't be as low and sweet, but I'll do my best.
It's always low and sweet, John. It's always low and sweet.
Yeah. Well, so folks, be aware we're really on the tech side gearing up for consensus incentives, which are going to be a really important, I think, change to the protocol.
Also known as staking rewards.
Right. Sorry. Let me start again. We're gearing up for staking rewards. And of course, Marc is right. We have to use consistent terminology because otherwise we're going to confuse people. And so staking rewards are, of course, the notion that you will get a reward in algo for producing a block or minting a block on the Algorand network. And we are calling it staking rewards and not consensus incentives. So that consensus incentives word is out the door. Staking rewards is what we're going live with, and that's what we'll be speaking about in our press releases. And we're targeting some alpha here. I can share. We're targeting December week 1 for go live in mainnet, where people will be able to turn on their computers and get going. And Apple just released, of course, the new M4 Mac Mini that I've been kind of eyeing up as a perfect low power, low cost device. Low power, not low cost. It's expensive, but low power runs at like 20 watts or 15 watts, and it's a great device for running a node. But of course, you can run it on any computer that you like. But it's a huge thing for us. I think it's going to be really a tectonic shift for Algorand because not only is it a philosophical kind of pivot or turn in terms of like moving from a place where we didn't pay or didn't pay rewards, the protocol didn't pay any rewards for producing blocks and securing the network. Okay, that's a philosophical shift. Now we will be paying people to secure the network essentially, or the protocol will be paying people to secure the network. Mm-hmm. But also, it drives a lot of excitement. I think. A lot of new eyes will be on Algorand when it enters into this new era. It's
John,
going to attract people from
I think what's interesting is it's new for the Algorand ecosystem, right? This is incredibly new. This is incredibly exciting, but it's actually not new for a lot of others in other ecosystems, which I think is so great. It's like an easy concept. Marc, I'm trying to say your job is going to be easy, but it's going to be an easy concept to market, but I know it's not, but it is. That's what's so exciting about it, is that it's new for us, but it's bringing us, on par with a lot of other ecosystems as well.
Sure. It was really cool, and we'll talk a lot more about this at the next podcast. But I think what's also really cool is how easy it is to actually run a node and stake with Algorand. Like you guys know this. Like I'm using my own like 10-year-old kind of Mac Pro to actually run a node, and it's just running perfectly. So you don't really need a huge amount of like computing power to be able to run a node, which is super, super, super cool.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
And so we will, as Marc says, be rolling out a piece of software, a great app that will help you run a node, easy peasy. It'll help you do all the bits that you need to do, like issue a participation key, all the techie bits. It'll just handle it all for you, and we'll do a demo of that soon. And then I'll stop in a moment, but just to call out, we have peer-to-peer coming straight after. Okay, it's going to change how data flows in the network, more decentralized. And then in very early 2025, we'll be releasing AlgoKit 3, and we haven't decided on the name for it yet, but that will bring TypeScript and other great things. And so it's really so much happening on the tech side of things. How about you, Min?
So much, so much. And then Marc, you've been busy too. I mean, there's been, we've seen videos out there that the marketing team's been working on.
Yeah, I mean, we've released a couple. Yeah, since the cipher, like it's been a long time ago, but since the cipher, we did a couple of like cool videos. We did the ice cream truck one, which got a lot of uptake and got a lot of people in other ecosystems upset for facing them with the truth about about how their chains perform. And so yeah, we did a couple of them, and then we had kind of the maxi videos as well. We had a lot of fun with them. But now we're kind of pivoting towards like the big kind of brand awareness campaign that we're working on, and that'll hit pretty soon. And so I can't wait to talk about that more at the next podcast episode.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think all this, all this conversation around what other ecosystems are doing, I mean, in fact, is quite topical, right? Like Ethereum's gone through quite a bit of how shall we say, activity over the last 3 months.
Turmoil.
Turmoil, activity, engagement, all the layer 1s and the layer 2s. I mean, this is all, it's an active space that we're in.
I mean, it's been interesting, right, to kind of hear the conversation about what the role is of a layer 1 versus layer 2. And we even had Vitalik mention Algorand in the context of economic finality or lack thereof. So, John, what do you think about all that?
Yeah, I think if I had an algo for every time someone's tagged me on this, I'd be a wealthy dude. Yeah, here's the interesting thing about this. I'm not sure why he cares about us so much. It's a bit strange. He's written and talked a lot about Algorand recently. I mean, it's great that we're on the minds of folks at the who are running networks like Ethereum. I mentioned briefly that when the earliest reference I can find to economic finality being discussed in the cryptocurrency space is about 8 years ago, so like a while ago, right? And it has kind of a formal definition, but essentially what it says is a block is crypto-economically final or has economic finality when it's going to be in the chain forever. Okay, that's posit one. Or secondly, the cost to revert it is higher than the value of reverting it. So let's kind of look at that again. It's either in the chain forever, and then it's economically final, or reversing it or tampering with it or changing it is going to be more expensive than how much money or how much value you would obtain by doing the change. And then if it's economically final, because I'm not going to change a block that it's going to cost me more money to change than the value I get from tampering with it. And so that's a very simple, I think, definition, right? It's quite easy to understand. And so, of course, the reason that this doesn't really apply to Algorand, and maybe you can bend and do the mental gymnastics to get it to a place where you can hand wave that it does in some kind of way. But essentially, the reason that it doesn't apply to Algorand is we don't use slashing. So we don't penalize folks who are staking if they misbehave. We remove them instead from the staking set. So again, we don't take their money. We just stop them from staking. Okay, so we drop their account offline. Number two, and this is so important, Algorand is instantly final. And I think maybe the folks who have been working on Ethereum have maybe not really grokked this. There are no reorgs. There is no replay. There is no short block height battles. There's no consensus reorgs. There's no notion of changing a block once it's in the chain. Once it's in the chain, it's instantly final. And so we don't have any forks. So you can never roll it back. And so really this idea of economic finality just simply doesn't apply to Algorand in any substantive way. And though, if you did want to kind of stretch things to the extreme and say, well, how could we maybe make it apply to Algorand? One might say that the economic finality of Algorand is the cost of destroying the entire chain, right? Because in order to revert a block, you'd have to literally bring the chain to its knees and control the entire chain. At which point, of course, the economic finality is 100%, because in the act of destroying the chain to tamper with a block, you would have, of course, destroyed any underlying value from that tampering. So hope that makes sense. Vitalik, of course, has put out like long, wordy blog posts, and so I'm not going to go through each point and try to give a counterpoint here, but just to say that great that they're thinking of us. economic finality doesn't really apply, and everything is okay.
I think it was interesting though, like the whole conversation and what prompted this discussion and Vitalik's reaction was really the Ethereum roadmap, right? And like, what does the roadmap look like, and what should be the role of a layer 1 versus layer 2? And I was struck by this conversation that happened, I think it was a few weeks ago on Bankless, where they invited Professor Omid Malikan from the Columbia Business School. And he was basically arguing that having a multi-layer approach actually made a lot of sense from a payments perspective, he says, because he said, like, Ethereum has a certain level of security that's provided. It's like, a massive amount of security, digital kind of vault, right? Where if you layer twos have less security, and that makes sense, and the costs are much lower. Ethereum cost is high, layer 2 cost is much lower, but the level of security is lower. And that makes a ton of sense when you think about payments, because, if you're basically want to transfer a Starbucks gift card, for instance, you could send it by mail, right? If you want to basically sell or transfer a painting that's worth multiple millions of dollars, you're not going to send it by mail. You're going to order like a big, armored truck to deliver the painting to your destination. And so think about like the multiple layers of Ethereum in the same way. If you want to do like a really big transaction, you need the security of a layer 1, and it comes with higher cost. But if it's millions of dollars worth of transaction fee doesn't really matter. If you're basically paying for your coffee, that doesn't make any sense to do it at layer 1. You do it at a layer 2 where the costs are much lower. So think about it as like a Fed wire is layer 1, an ACH transfer is layer 2. So therefore, this whole system makes a lot of sense. So of course, that's, I think, how that debate kind of gets summarized. And so, of course, we at Algorand, we have layer 1, and we feel that we only need a layer 1. John, what's your thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's different schools of thought on this, but and I can see where that individual on the bank list was coming from. But here's the thing: by definition, a layer 2 security is provided by the underlying layer 1. That's the definition of a layer 2. And a sidechain, which is closely related to a kind of the notion of a layer 2, you might have heard of sidechain or daughter chain. Those sidechain things, they have their own consensus mechanism. And so there are examples of both. Cardano's Midnight originally started off as a sidechain. It was supposed to have its own consensus mechanism, not rely on the security of Cardano for its security. I think since then it's changed so that Midnight is now using the security of Cardano directly. And so nearly all layer 2s, they shouldn't have a reduction in security. If you've got a properly implemented layer 2 with no backdoors or centralized control, with no kind of like tight group of folks who can kind of manipulate things or turn things on and off, if it's truly a trustless, permissionless, well-engineered layer 2, it should have the same security as the layer 1, essentially. But of course, as that gentleman or person on Bankless said, it's not the case, because most layer 2s, as any that I'm aware of, they all have some caveat around security, i.e. the interaction with the lower chain, the interaction with the downstream layer 1 chain is in some way, they have some level of centralized control, whether that's the ability to pause the layer 2, the ability to roll back certain transactions, the ability to manually interact with things. And so that's where you have a problem. Of course, our thesis at Algorand is that you don't need a layer 2 if your layer 1 is fit for purpose. And I think we've seen this. I mean, think of it this way. What's the greatest distributed network in the world? The internet, right? Does that have a layer 2? I don't think so. All classes of traffic on the internet, whether it's web traffic, HTTPS, SSH traffic, streaming video with real-time protocols, streaming voice, VoIP calls, you name it. All those layers and classes of traffic, they all flow through the same systems. They all flow through the same border gateway. They all flow through the same IP, TCP/IP stack. They all use layer 1 protocols for their implementation. And so we don't have this idea really of an internet on top of an internet on top of an internet. Of course, we have technologies like Tor or I2P, privacy layers that might sit on top of the internet. But truly, the day-to-day internet traffic for 99.9% of the internet's data propagation is all handled by the internet at a common single base layer. And so we feel that it is possible to deliver an incredible experience for the end user whilst giving them that same user experience at layer 1, where they are interacting directly with the protocol, which is secure, robust, and scalable. Without having to tack on layer 2 solutions. But what it requires is a very nuanced software architecture, a nuanced network topology, and it requires, of course, terrific engineering. But I think at Algorand, we have managed to deliver on that vision. We've managed to deliver a layer 1 that can scale up from its current 10,000 transactions a second up to enterprise grade, industry leading 30, 40, 50K transactions a second over the coming years, whilst maintaining security and robustness. And so really, the only reason you need a layer 2 in this day and age, with our current speed of computing and the current bandwidth of the global internet, is if you haven't properly designed your layer 1. Now, I will add one caveat. I do think that there may have a place for app-specific layer 2s. And so what I mean by this is maybe a layer 2 that does something very specific that wouldn't make sense to implement in the context of a blockchain. So there's, of course, only so much you can do in a smart contract that has to run in 2 seconds, or on some networks even faster. So you have to execute your code within milliseconds. And so you can't run LLMs, you can't do a bunch of AI things, you can't do certain classes of work. And so we may have a place for an app-specific layer 2, where maybe, for example, you fire off a request to an LLM and you get a response back from a decentralized layer 2.
Right.
Something like that does make sense. But for pure scaling on transactions, I don't think so. I think you've blown it if you're using L2s for scaling.
So if I summarize your point,
No.
basically, it's not because a Fedwire can't scale that therefore a blockchain shouldn't be able to scale. Right. So we're basically taking the legacy payment systems and trying to kind of use this as a justification as to why you need a layer 1 and a layer 2, and that doesn't make any sense.
Right. Totally. Yeah. I mean,
Well, I think most of the layer 2s, right? If we think about it, most of the layer 2s are built for a specific use case, a specific reason. Whether it's app chain is a very good example of that, but a lot of the layer 2s are really focused on specific use cases. And I would say payments, actually, Marc, you touched on this. I would say payments is one of the most common use cases, right? Because you need speed, because you need low fees, and because there's this expectation of real-time settlement, et cetera. From our experience in Web 2, payments tend to be a very sort of like common use case for what a lot of these layer 2s are looking to basically be able to offer. And I think this is kind of bringing it back to us a little bit, but we have quite a bit of payments in our ecosystem, payments projects and builders in our ecosystem that are looking at the payment space. And in fact, maybe Marc, you can talk a little bit about this one project that came over from Ethereum to Algorand in the payment space called Ztlment, which I think is a pretty good example of kind of what we have to offer in terms of our layer 1 versus building on some other ecosystem.
Yeah, so Ztlment is a really cool company, and I'm hoping that the Ztlment team will approve of how I position them and how I describe their business. But in short, what they do is they basically provide payment settlement services. Think about this as the case of Airbnb, for instance. If you're like Airbnb, you basically have thousands of owners that are basically renting out their properties, and so then there's a big settlement complexity in this because the payments come from the consumers. They have to be managed by Airbnb. Airbnb has to pay it out to the owners, and this whole process of financial settlement is very, very, very complicated. And so what Ztlment does is they make those types of transactions easy to manage. Think about it as an event organizer. If I'm like a concert organizer and you have maybe 10 or 15 restaurants and bars that are basically offering services to people that visit kind of the festival, a huge settlement kind of challenge on making sure that whatever people pay gets settled back to all of the vendors that are on that festival ground. So that's what they do. And so it's a very interesting company. They used to be on Ethereum, and they moved to Algorand, for the main reason And that's, to me, is very interesting. So the main reason that they thought it was much, they found that it was much faster and much more productive to develop on Algorand compared to Ethereum. And the reason for that was because Algorand's AVM has much more functionality built in, such as multisig, such as atomic swaps, and many others. So they don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel every single time they want to build something that deals with kind of financial transactions. So that, to me, was the very interesting component of that.
Yeah, that's such a, I mean, it's like the perfect example of why, Algorand really provides kind of the right use case, the right functionalities for that use case of like settling to multiple people at once. And you need to be able to do it with instant finality, and you need to do it fast and cheap and all that stuff. Actually,
Yeah.
speaking of which, oh, sorry, go ahead. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, and so I will say what. So we kind of published based on the experience. We published a paper on this, and you can find on our blog post. And so they basically, their experience was that 30 to 50% of their engineering time was focused on integrating with blockchain, as opposed to in Ethereum in this case, as opposed to working on the use cases that their customers might like. And
Hmm.
so that's crazy, right? That's
Hmm.
just completely crazy. Imagine you're like a CTO at a company, and you're going to have to explain to your CEO that you're going to spend half of your time doing an integration with Oracle, and only
Hmm.
half of the time is going to be spent on, like, useful use cases. That makes no sense whatsoever. And so the 30 to 50% integration cost, they brought it down, to single digits on Algorand, which I think is super, super powerful.
Yeah, that's amazing. So then that means they can spend their engineering time building the product, right? And building the experience and building the user flow. You also touched on atomic swaps. And I think that's actually worth us spending a quick second on as well, because it's so fast. We made an announcement at Decipher, I believe, right, where we partnered with Aberdeen and Archex and to tokenize money market funds using atomic transfers. But I think, John, it might be good for us to just like talk about how atomic swaps and atomic transfers work.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And by the way, Ztlment, very interesting company. I met with their leadership at Decipher, our large event that we had in Barcelona earlier this year, and I think that they're doing some great stuff. And indeed, they are regulated. Their wallet infrastructure is regulated under PSD2, so they're quite a grown up outfit doing some very interesting things. So yeah, atomic swaps are a native feature of Algorand. Atomic transactions, rather, I should say, are a native feature of Algorand, and they can be used to deliver atomic swaps. What is atomicity? And so it's this idea that, well, certainly in the context of atomic transactions, that you can bunch together or basket or group together a selection of transactions. And you can say, hey, unless all of these transactions are successful, then none of them should be processed. And that's a very powerful idea. To do this type of thing on other networks, you typically need to use smart contracts to build abstraction, and it's really quite complicated. You have to have a whole bunch of back-end stuff to do it. Algorand has this notion or this kind of feature, literally, as part of its core primitives on the protocol, as part of that core selection of features that lets you, when you're submitting transactions, to bunch them together in a group. And like I mentioned, it essentially says if any of these transactions are bad, it spoils the entire bunch, and so do not process any of them. And so this allows you to create incredible applications for payments. Of course, I think we highlighted it in some of our quite well received videos and ads that we did recently in New York. But the idea that, hey, if you can't trust the seller, and they can't trust you really as the buyer, wouldn't it be great if we can stick the transactions together in a little atomic group and say, hey, only let this go through if both sides, if their transactions are valid. And of course, we use this all the time. And as you mentioned, Min, a great example of this is the Aberdeen Money Market Fund, which is a traditional money market fund that is being tokenized. So there are tokens that represent value from Aberdeen, from the money market fund. And traditionally, and I hope I articulate this correctly, because of course it's something that's been led by our biz dev team and by folks outside of the tech group. So traditionally, when you are swapping, when you're moving between, say, euro or dollars and a fund, you have to have this process where you send the money and it settles, and then they send the tokens, or sorry, they send the rights to the fund, and then that settles, and you have this kind of process that takes, in many cases, days. And of course, the cool thing about digitizing something like a money market fund, in a way that is, it now becomes a token that's represented on Algorand, and it has all the benefits now of the internet, digitization, and Algorand's base layer. And we already have euro that's been, quite literal, regulated electronic money token for euro. And so now what you can do is you can, with high frequency, swap in and out with instant finality, because of course that's what Algorand offers. And you can have these instantly settled swaps, hundreds of thousands or millions of them a day, all using Algorand and its tokenized version of this money market fund. And so it's just a great example of where you can trustlessly trade. You don't have to worry about your counterparty. You can go back and forth as many times as you like. And the entire thing is settled instantly. So you don't have to be wondering, or waiting rather, for settlement from traditional venues.
And Algo Leaks, our Algo fan member Algo Leaks demonstrated this very well using the hot dog videos, right? You could check out the hot dog videos online if you haven't seen them yet,
Exactly
and
right.
see how atomic swap works in practice.
Right.
Or
You
doesn't
let go.
work in
No,
practice.
you let go. You let go. John, I think your explanation was spot on. And I think also in the context of these large money market funds, it's even ever so more important that these transactions, these transfers happen within the context of, like, the instant finality, and make sure that it happens instantaneously together.
Sure.
Right.
And, I even have this personally. I remember when I bought my first house, I'd saved for I only have one house, but when I bought that first house, talk about it like I've got a portfolio. I had, I'd saved for ages, right? My wife and I'd saved for a long time, as people do, to buy a house. And I had to transfer our money from our personal accounts to this big joint account. And it was tens of thousands of euros. And it took 5 days to turn up, and I'm like, where is the money? It's got to be sitting somewhere. It's not in my account. It's not in her account anymore. So where is it? And of course, I mean, this may be a cynical thing to say, but I have this feeling that the time value of money, right? Money sits in accounts, it bears interest, and it's not in traditional markets interest, when you have many of people like me who are moving money all over the place, to do it quickly. It's, of course, they have the time value of money when it's sitting on their books. And so I think technologies like Algorand are going to just level the playing field.
Yeah. And I actually want to spend a little bit of time talking about another payments implementation that we also announced at Decipher, which is the Pera debit card. This is, a little bit near and dear to my heart, because the Pera team's been working on this for the last 3-4 months. But that's another example, John, sort of an implementation that the Immersve. So actually, let me take a moment and just talk a little bit about Immersve, right? So Immersve is, they're a fintech company. They are in the payments flow. They're considered an issuer. So they are a principal partner for Mastercard, the network, and they can issue cards on behalf of Mastercard. And so in this case, we are partnering with them. Parah is partnering with them to launch a Parah debit card, so we can issue a debit card to Parah users via Immersve. Immersve, actually, if you think about sort of what payments in this context means, is somebody uses a card with a merchant. The merchant / acquirer then sends that transaction to the issuing bank, in this case, Immersve, via the Mastercard network. Immersve validates that this card is real, that this person is real, that there's enough funds in this card, and then approves it. And when that gets approved, it comes back to the Mastercard network, to the acquirer merchant, and it says accept, right? And so that's kind of the flow, and that's kind of how Immersve plays into it. And so when, in that process, it is so important for Immersve to know that there is enough funds in this card. And they actually have an implementation on Algorand where they're able to check that balance on chain because of our instant finality, to be able to say, okay, Min does have 10 USDC in her wallet in this card that she can pay for an $8 boba iced tea. So I think that's like such an important sort of feature of Algorand that a network like Immersve that was building on Ethereum, was building on Polygon, is actually able to build an on-chain implementation of its debit card offering. And I think that's it's kind of an amazing opportunity for us.
Totally. I don't really have anything else to add to that. I mean, you described it perfectly. I just to re-emphasize though, I think the most important thing you just said is that Immersve are great, Pera's great. Together, they allow Pera to really fly when you can issue, as you just said, a Mastercard and use it with Pera. But the critical thing, when I talked to those guys first, was bringing them on the journey of explaining, hey guys, you got at the moment some risk with Ethereum. You batch things up. You got to trust a certain number of confirmations, and you have some uncertainty with regard to your settlement. And sure, you can make sure that you do your DD and your KYC or whatever with your customers, and so you can pursue them if there's issues. But it removes entire classes of error for these guys. These guys literally have a back end that is now simpler on the Algorand side than it is on the Ethereum side, because they don't have to worry about all this orchestration stuff. They can trust what they see on the chain is what it is. And so this is, as you just said, it's a terrific implementation, and it gives users on the Algorand side with Immersve and Mastercard a better experience than would otherwise be possible.
An example of that better experience, in fact, is so the card is, by the way, I'm super excited. Again, I'm excited about this because we're testing this internally right now. And so I think, we're hoping to launch this in the next month or two. But, when you sign up for this card, you have to load USDC into this card so they can spend. Now, most cards that you get, you basically are sending the USDC or sending money onto that card, and it's stuck on that card. With our implementation, you can withdraw the USDC back into your wallet. And that is very unique for us, right? So this money that you're sending to this card isn't stuck on this card, and you don't have to always just use that card to spend it. You can bring it back into your wallet. And that's actually unique because on Algorand, for certain that amount is not currently being, spent elsewhere because the finality piece of it again. So I think, these are just kind of examples of how the nuances of how you implement some of these transactions is just really, really, really cool.
And I'm actually very excited about this because this is like a great kind of real world use case, right? Remember when we did this video, the supermarket video, people were saying, well, you would never use like crypto to pay for your coffee. Well, guess what? You are, and you can. And with Algorand, you definitely can with this debit card. You can use it any store, you can pay, and it'll just work, right? Whereas, as we know with the others, there's all kinds of issues. And so it gets to show you that like we're really bringing kind of blockchain technology into the real world and like adapting to real world use cases and using all of the advantages that Algorand has to really scale this in a real world context. And that's why I'm very excited about this.
Thank you for the opportunity to play Solana in that seminal piece of work. I mean, it was the performance of my life, obviously, performance of my career, and it was just a pleasure to play that Solana user.
John, we need to figure out how do we do this going forward, right? We don't want to typecast you too much, John. Like,
I'm like, I don't want to become like an action hero or whatever. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, you gotta have range.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's super cool. All right. Well, I know we've spent a bunch of time talking about all these different payments projects in our ecosystem, but I think it was worth it because I think, as we think about what's coming up over the next few months and what's launching and what folks can expect to see, I think those are all the exciting stuff. But as we are closing into the next segment of our podcast, which is a look at what has been happening in the ecosystem. And so I want to call in our ecosystem correspondent, Mr. Fred Estante. There he is. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
We're good. We're talking about payments. I don't know. Is that important for us?
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal, right? I was just watching backstage and there's a lot of really cool stuff coming up soon. So I'm excited. But hey, I'm happy to be back. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. Tell us what's been going on.
All right. So, since I received the invitation to come to the podcast a few days ago, I started like nonstop just collecting, the data from the latest happenings in the ecosystem. Spent an entire weekend working on it. Okay. Then I pinged Marc yesterday and said, "Hey, Marc, I need about like 27 hours in my segment, to cover everything since the cipher." Marc came back to me and said, "Hey, Fred, best I can do is like 5 minutes." So I had to cut some stuff, only focusing the last few days. But yeah, let's jump right in. A lot of really cool stuff happening all over the Algorand ecosystem. So let's start with DeFi because I'm a little bit biased towards that. Lots and lots happening over at Compex. So they recently launched the Lofty Vaults, which basically means you can deposit property tokens from Lofty and use them as collateral to borrow XUSD. Great stuff. Compex also just recently launched their platform token and also minted ALGO, which is their upcoming LST, liquid staking token, for the introduction of native staking on Algorand soon enough, as John just mentioned. Compex also introduced some really cool new features for XUSD takers, their stablecoin. So now basically 20% of all interest on that is shared directly with those users that stake XUSD. And they're also launching a new fun system of accolades that basically allow you to showcase your achievements with exclusive NFTs that boost your rewards, give you special voting power, and a bunch of really good stuff. So stay tuned. And still in the DeFi world, Tinyman Farm Cycle 4 voting just opened. So if you are a registered Tinyman governor, go ahead and vote. But changing gears a little bit towards the real world asset vertical, Lofty continues to list stunning properties and also to drop new liquidity pools against some of these properties. And it's cool to take a step back and just see the impressive numbers that Lofty has done so far. So their AMM, has around $2 million of total value lent so far. And the entire marketplace has done over $65 million in total volume. And the numbers just keep climbing and climbing. And they recently also launched a pretty cool feature for discovery, which are property ratings and review system. So basically, as you're browsing around properties, you can just go and kind of like you do in Google, you can do on Lofty to see the ratings and reviews for each specific property. But moving on from the RWA world, there's also a lot of stuff happening in the NFT and gaming front in the Algorand blockchain. So Realms has recently dropped the drop boxes that basically contains wearables, clothing, and accessory items that can be used in their upcoming virtual world. ALGO Gems launched the ArcPay integration, which is currently live on testnet, and the Exa Market rewards campaign with CoinList is going strong. Lots and lots of rewards for NFT buyers and sellers all over the platform. So look it up. And then, moving on to the infrastructure and tools vertical, which is also something that I'm very much interested because there's a lot of activity happening. Blockstalker recently integrated with Exa Market to track listings, sales, and drops in real time. When.tools just brought back the Pinata Simple Mint and update tools. And they also just integrated with Crust Network's IPFS pinning services. Lots of great resources for all the NFT heads out there. And Pera Wallet, Min was just talking about it. They have been on a streak. They just rolled out several incredible updates over the last week. They added support for Ledger Flex and Stacks. They released lots of amazing UI improvements, especially in the favorite section, which is my favorite. And for the developers out there, the Pera Explorer now shows approval and clear programs fully decompiled. So that makes a huge difference for the devs out there. Gara Network has just released a brand new vesting contract to node runners and delegators. So look it up. You got work to do if you're a delegator or node runner in Gara. Laura, the Explorer, built by the Algorand Foundation, continues to push updates in a very fast pace, having recently just integrated with NF domains, and plus, a whole bunch of amazing quality of life updates for the devs out there. So if you're a dev building on Algorand, you gotta use Laura. Algorand Observer just launched a new block explorer based on the open source version of Depthflow. If you want to learn more about it, just follow D13 on socials. And to wrap up today's ecosystem news coverage, I just want to share that WeCoop, the decentralized social media network built on Algorand Rails, has recently launched Pulse in the platform, which basically allows users to get rewarded for engaging and participating in decentralized social media. So, I think that's roughly all that I had brought to the Algo fam today. It's been a pleasure being back. Thanks for inviting me, team.
Fred, it's always a pleasure having you, and it's
Yeah,
always
except for when he shows us up, aesthetically. So
yeah.
that's
We're used to that.
I'm
We're used
sorry.
to that, aren't we, John? He does it every time. Maybe it's on us to not learn.
I'm
Great
steady
job,
and
Fred.
predictable. Thanks, team. Have a good one.
Thanks,
thanks,
Fred.
Fred.
One thing I realized we didn't get a chance to talk to, but Marc, maybe we can spend a couple minutes on before we wrap up is as we think about all the stuff that's been happening in our ecosystem, we also launched our Coinbase Quest in September as well, which, I'd say we've learned a lot from it, but it has been quite successful in terms of driving new users into our ecosystem, right? We've seen hundreds of thousands of new users come into Algorand, and the data is still very new, but we've seen, like millions of on-chain transactions that took place because of the Coinbase Quest. We partnered with 5 projects in the ecosystem. It was Pera. It was, you download a wallet and fund this wallet. It was Tinyman. You swap algos for USDC on Tinyman. It was Folks. You farm, USDC on one of the pools on on Folks, and then you claim an NFT on Exa Market. NFD launched their V3 subscription, so now you can mint a .algo. I know it's a lot of work. You and I both know that it's a ton of work for these projects to really, get ready for the Quest. But I just felt like that was such a great moment for us as an ecosystem to have everybody work together on this Quest. I thought it was just fabulous.
And I thought what was interesting as well is that in addition to kind of like the success of the numbers and seeing all these new downloads, what I was actually very pleasantly surprised with was like how high the conversion rate was from like one step to the other in the quest. There's multiple quests. First, you have to download Parah, then you had Folks, and then you had Tinyman. And so the conversion rate between these stages was like in the 80s and 90%.
Yeah. High 80s, low 90s. It's crazy.
Right. Yeah. And so what's interesting about that is that it clearly shows that the user experience that people are having is smooth and is good, and it's very good and smooth. And that's really what, like, ultimately, if you think about Algorand's technology and the fact that we have instant finality, you don't have to wait 20 seconds for a transaction to go through. It's all very smooth. And then combine that with the great UI that Parah has and the UI that's provided by our partners, shows you how like elegant the whole system is, and how users are really kind of enjoying going through these multiple quests and going through it. And I thought that was very interesting as well.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. Like the fact that like users did most of these quests, right? Like that means that there was enough value proposition, the experience was good enough such that they actually did it.
Right.
And I'd say the other thing that's really kind of beautiful to see is, at the NFD team also, worked together with the rest of the ecosystem to do drops for those that have participated in the quest, right? So they partnered up with, I think, Cosmic Champs and Akita and others to kind of even add more value to those that actually participated in the quest. So bringing in more projects into the ecosystem. And it was just, I think it's just really lovely to see everybody come together. And we, of course, we also are going to be launching the Galaxy Quests soon. And so when that happens, it'll be really fun and exciting to see the projects jump on that one too. So
yeah, and we're definitely thinking about how to do that and how to integrate Galaxy Quests, maybe do one combined with staking or something. So we're still trying to figure out the details of that, but we definitely want to also play with the Galaxy Quest and see if that can also bring in a new kind of generation of users to Algorand.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah,
for sure.
I think that lots of people in the ecosystem, sorry to cut across you, man. Lots of people in the ecosystem did really well in order to get the engineering done on time, because Coinbase have their API, etc., which goes out there, and I know you guys know this because you were helping them more than I was, Min. But like, it's just like a lot of folks as part of the quests had to make modifications and custom software to integrate and make sure everything was seamless for the user. Yep. And so they were working down to like the last minute to get that done. And so appreciate that effort as well.
Totally. And it's like, exactly, NFD, launching V3 is killer. Like, and they did it, I know, because they wanted to make the quest work, so I think it's just, again, thanks to the team, and Exa as well had to do some updating to their platform to make the quests work. And I think it's like a nice way to push us forward, together and collectively. It was really nice. So actually, Marc, maybe you were kind of teasing a little bit, right? Like we're teasing this Galaxy quest that's coming up. There's some other stuff that's coming up as well. So maybe before we bid farewell to our viewers, what can they look forward to the next couple of weeks before they see us again?
Well, so in 2 weeks' time, for a net podcast, I suggest we cover 2 topics. One is going to the details on the upcoming staking rewards, and so going to the details means talking like numbers and actual partners, and like how you can stake and all the details, everything you ever want to know about staking and you don't know about. Like we will cover it. We will cover it in the next podcast. So that's one thing I think we can do next time, which will be very exciting for a lot of people. And then the second thing I think we can talk about is the launch of our kind of big marketing campaign. As I mentioned at the Cypher, we have been planning this marketing campaign to kind of create more broader awareness for Algorand, centered around this idea of real world scale, which is what we are and how we position ourselves. So we've been working very, very hard over the summer to get this campaign ready. And we are very, 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 very close to actually launching it. And so I can't wait to talk a lot more about that in the next podcast, because by then, hopefully, we will be close to live, if not live already.
Wow. Yeah, that would be super cool. I mean, I think both of those are going to be really fun, and I'm sure the ecosystem's eagerly waiting to hear about the brand campaign as well as the staking rewards, which is all hands on deck here as well. So this is great. And then I do think that for those of you who will be at DEF CON in Bangkok, I think we have some of our team members there as well. So please join us. We have across, I think it's DevRel, right, John? I think it's DevRel, marketing, ecosystem. We're going to be bringing some projects there. It'll be really fun. Web Summit as well in Portugal for those of you who are in Europe and you're thinking of attending Web Summit. We have a few folks who are going to be showing up there as well. So come see us in IRL, as they say.
And talking about DEF CON, so John will be speaking at the Staking Rewards conference, which is right before DEF CON, where he will talk about the details also. So if you happen to be in that part of the world, go see John, and you'll be the first to hear.
Yes, my first time actually.
Marc, I can't believe I forgot about John speaking at the keynote at the staking summit. Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry.
The staking summit, it's gonna be great, and Vitalik's there as well, so hopefully some intellectual sparring with him. But no, it's gonna be fun, and I've never been to Bangkok, and I hear it's really good. So I'm very much looking forward to talking about staking rewards and getting involved over there.
And then if you're at DEF CON, you'll actually notice some glimpses of the new marketing campaign. I won't say anything else, but there'll be like the first kind of like little elements of that new campaign will seep in during DEF CON. So be on the lookout for that if you're there.
And Min, just some really quick thing. Great individual from the ecosystem on X. Their handle is at ALGO Mercantile or ALGO Merc. They basically sell apparel or clothing that's branded with Algorand. And so I just want to shout out to those guys. They sent me this beautiful hoodie, which you can see here has a rocket on it to the moon with Algorand written on it.
Wow.
And it's really soft, really lovely. Came all the way from the United States all the way to Ireland. So thank you very much, ALGO Merc, for that. And maybe if folks want to check out a business that's trying to, I guess, produce really nice clothes from what I can see here, check out algomerc.com, and they have a bunch of stuff there that you can maybe get involved with.
Wow, that's John flexing, getting some pretty nice merch on us, Marc. I don't know. Did you get any? That looks awesome. That looks awesome. Yeah, let's for sure check it out. Algo Merc.
Algomerc.com. Yeah, ALGOMERC.com.
Very cool. Awesome. All right. Well, it was so great to get together, you guys, to chat. And I look forward to our next conversation in 2 weeks. And for those of you joining us today, the viewers out there, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.